Even though I've been playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh since 2012, it wasn't until 2015 that I finally realized that everything in Yu-Gi-Oh is temporary for better or for worse. What I mean by that is that the meta decks of today are always next year's or the years after rogue strategies. What I mean from that is that expensive cards right now are not expensive, usually after a couple years at most. And what I also mean by that is that many of the friends that I've made along my competitive Yu-Gi-Oh career are ones that I don't hang out with as much anymore. And what I figured out in 2015 is that things don't happen a second time. You never get to relive certain years of Yu-Gi-Oh! You never get to re-hang out with your friends back when they lived near you. And in today's video for Thanksgiving, I know it's a little different than my normal content, I want to talk about some of the friends and the tournament experiences that I've had over the past 6 years of playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And hopefully pass on some lessons to you guys, because I've met you guys at tournaments, the fans of the channel. Many of you guys are late high schoolers or early college students, and I think I have some advice to pass on, the biggest piece of which is that everything is temporary, so take advantage of it while you can. A good example of this, and we're gonna go back before I was a YouTuber, before I was even in college. Let's go all the way back to my senior year of high school in late 2012, back when I thought that Ultimate Offering and Madolche Magellan was the best combo in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! And also I looked way nerdier than I do right now. Not that I don't look nerdy right now. In 2012 and 2013, I was that guy in the friend group that was the youngest. I was hanging out with mostly early college students that all had way more money than me and were way better at Yu-Gi-Oh! Than me, and I was sort of the wallflower, the guy that just sort of paid attention to what other people were saying when they were playing their games. I wasn't the type of person to even really know what a regional qualifier was or YCS was, but I knew that I loved playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And I knew that I loved learning things from those that were better than me. Now, you guys don't know any of these people. Maybe you've seen them in some older videos of mine. I highly doubt it though. But friends that I remember hanging out with so much, like Lucas and Joe and Will and so many other people, I'm not going to name all of them, but mainly those three had the biggest influence on me as an early duelist. And while I did have a lot of fun and I did learn a lot in that senior year of high school, it wasn't until my freshman year of college where things really started to kick off. That's late 2013, early 2014, back when the end of Dragon Ruler format, the second Dragon Ruler format into Hat format. And I know anytime that I'm asked like what's my favorite format in Yu-Gi-Oh, I always say all of 2014 is just fantastic, and there are a lot of factors for that. I think that the format being wide open was fantastic, but also that's when I finally realized that if I put time and energy into creating things that I was proud of, I actually could see some success in Yu-Gi-Oh! That was the time that I got my first regional top 8 with a deck list that I now realize is ridiculously horrible, but it worked at the time. That was the day that I got my first YCS Day 2 at my first YCS, and that was the year that so many fun things happened in Yu-Gi-Oh! I remember going to events pretty much every single weekend. I mean, I know nowadays I go to a YCS every month. Maybe I take that for granted, but back then I hadn't really traveled that much. I didn't have any money to travel, and finally with college I had the free time on the weekends to go wherever I wanted within driving distance. And I mean, we were going to regionals like 4 hours away every single weekend because all of us were college students. We had nothing better to do except play Yu-Gi-Oh, hang out. And I've said it before, I think in live streams and stuff, but one of the best ways to make a friend and get to know someone really on a really deep level is to go to a regional with them. You drive a couple hours to the regional early in the morning, you stay there all day, you hang out with them, you see how they're doing throughout the tournament, and then you drive home with them. And that's a lot of time to spend with someone, and hopefully on the other end you'll come out friends. And there were so many friends that I made during those years. I mean, I already mentioned Lucas and Joe, who were sort of my longest Yu-Gi-Oh friends at the time, but even people like Will and John, people who also you've never heard of, but that I want to give a shout out in this video because they had such a huge impact on my early college life. People that I would have lifelong friendships with long past when they quit Yu-Gi-Oh! But it was also when I started realizing, like this video title suggests, that everything is temporary. I remember when Joe quit Yu-Gi-Oh! In late 2013, and I just was devastated. Not only was he one of my best friends in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but he was one of my best friends at the time, someone I looked up to, someone I still look up to. He plays Hearthstone now, and I'm constantly asking him stuff about Hearthstone. One of the reasons that I got into Hearthstone was just to hang out with him more, and when I think of Joe leaving, it really left a mark on me because I realized oh crap, we're not all just gonna play Yu-Gi-Oh forever. And when Joe left, he left because he graduated college. And then at the summer of 2014, my friend Lucas, my best friend and one of my best friends still to this day, he graduated as well, and that's when I felt really alone. It was weird because that was the first time that I had truly felt so alone. I had friends all throughout high school, obviously, and I had friends in college, just not at my college. So when all these people started graduating, when my friend Will moved back home, I suddenly realized I didn't really have the relationships with friends around my campus that I did with people off campus. And it was kind of sad. I mean, I realized at that time that I would never get those moments back. And I remembered one thing that I sort of beat myself up about for a very long time, probably about a year after that, was that I realized that there were many times throughout those high school nights and throughout those early college nights that I sort of didn't go out with them. Like they were going out to Applebee's to play some midnight Yu-Gi-Ohs, as cool people do, and I just said, no, I'm busy tonight, I'm doing something else, and if I could go back, I would go to all those things. And I think that that's something that I translated really well into my next sort of Yu-Gi-Oh group of friends, which happened at the middle of 2014 after the WCQ. I was feeling, like I said, pretty lonely, and I decided to go to a Columbus Regional, which is a very long trip, with a person that I had sort of talked to, not really hung out with though, and his name is Ricky. And if any of you went to YCS Pasadena this past weekend, you'll know Ricky because he was the friend that was hanging out with me, which shows that we've been friends for 4 years, which, man, time flies. It feels like I've known Ricky forever, and Ricky and more people like that, like Austin, are people that I now hang out with a ton, or at least I did in 2014 through 2015, and that was like the new set of Yu-Gi-Oh friends. And during that time, I tried to go out as much as possible. I mean, maybe too much. There were some weekends, especially during the summers when we were all off of classes, where we would hang out every single night of the week. And I think some of our favorite places, there's a local diner near my house. It's open 24 hours. We would just sit there for like 6 hours playing Yu-Gi-Oh, eating hot dogs, eating waffles, all sorts of crazy things. They didn't mind. All the people there knew us by name. They knew that we played Yu-Gi-Oh, and they didn't like shame us for it. They just knew that we were there to hang out, and they were okay with it. And while a lot of those duels were for competitive reasons, we were trying to test for the next event or test for locals, many of those nights we spent just playing sort of random casual rule sets. And I know people watching this video, watching me in 2018, think, oh, I'm just an all competitive player all the time. But we had some really hilarious like matchups. I think the one that I can show you guys real quick is that we had this idea where we'd like blend our decks together and play a match with them, and it was a lot of fun, even though it was completely casual. And these are the type of things that I would miss later on. We had a Burning Abyss deck and a Shadow deck. We were really bored just doing that matchup, so what we did was we combined all 80 cards into one deck and then randomly took out piles of 5 and then just put decks together blindly. We're going to share extra decks, and searching in the deck is limited to 5 seconds. You can't figure out what you have in there. You just got to make the decision right away. And those were some of the best nights of my life in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it gave me not necessarily a sense of purpose, but it gave me something to look forward about Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think if we're looking at when I was having the most fun in Yu-Gi-Oh!, if we're kind of looking at like 2014 and then skip forward like a year to 2015, those were like the best times. 2 completely different friend groups, but still having just as much fun as each one does with each other. I just loved those 2 years of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Career. Like I said, 2 very different friend groups, and sometimes they've blended over. We've gone to some recent YCSs, like the 200th YCS, where Ricky and Austin hung out with Lucas, and we all sort of, they seem to get along just fine, which is cool. But overall, I realized during that time that I would never get that time back, and I was right. In this case, being right once again didn't mean that I was graduating college, but that Ricky was graduating college, and what that meant is that he moved back home, which is 2 hours away. So even though we still go to bigger events, I'll no longer get those locals that we used to go to. I mean, we used to go to like 3 locals in one weekend. It was just a ton of fun. And even though Austin still lives relatively near me, he still has a ton of things on his plate. A real job and school to go to, as well as people like Tom and Eric, who I met through college and who played Yu-Gi-Oh! And we used to hang out a lot. Both of them graduated and, like everyone else, moved back home. So it wasn't really me graduating. I mean, I stay in the same place, but it's tough because I think when you're in college, you forget that not everyone grows up in that town if you lived in that town. So many of the people that I hung out with that were here for college, I didn't quite realize when I signed up for our friendship, not that you sign up for friendships, but you get what I mean. I didn't quite realize that once they graduated, they would just leave forever and likely not come back. And I wish I would have realized that a little bit sooner. Obviously, I don't regret being friends with any of these people because they're all fantastic people, but I wish I would have realized a little sooner that I can't get too attached to them because they have to go back home eventually. If you learn anything from this video, I want you to learn that everything goes away eventually. And I know that sounds depressing, but what I want you to take away from this is that yes, things do go away eventually. If anything, it just means that you should cherish these people, cherish these experiences all the more when you're in the moment, not looking back at it, but actually don't take things for granted while they're happening. I hope this video was helpful for at least some of you. I know that's a little depressing, I know that's a little sad, but really just try to keep in mind, I'm trying to help you guys out. If this helped anyone, I am super happy because these are things that I wish someone would have told me before all these friends drifted away from where I live. I wish I would have known to actually go out just one more night to hang out for Yu-Gi-Oh! I wish I would have known to go to that regional that I maybe skipped because I thought I'd be too tired. Because if I can give you any piece of advice to end this video out, it's that in 5 months after going to a regional and complaining about how early you had to get up, how late you had to stay there, you will not remember how tired you were. However, you will remember the matches you played and the conversations that you had with the friends you made along the way. And I know it sounds cheesy, I know it sounds corny, so I'll end the video here, but I really do take this stuff seriously. I think you guys can probably hear that from the way that I've talked about all these great memories that I have with friends that I will honestly have forever. It seems like many of the friends that have drifted away from Yu-Gi-Oh! Are still people that I keep in touch with, and that's just fantastic. I owe a lot to Yu-Gi-Oh! Not only for my career, but also for many of the friendships that I've made that are really long lasting. Anyway though, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Even though it was a little bit different style from what I normally post, I felt like it was important to talk about on Thanksgiving because I am thankful for all the things that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has given me, especially my friends. I'll see you guys later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.